Andy, hello, sir.
How you doing, Guy?
Good, mate. Long time.
Nice batch of guitars in the background then?
Thank you. Yeah, I arranged them depending on the guest.
Oh, I figured that.
Yeah.
Just like me with Muffin the Mule behind me. Sorry. Yeah.
Andy, we've never met. I'm Gary.
How you doing, Gary? No, we've never met. Nice to meet you.
Nice jackets too.
Yeah, well, I'm of my time. This is period tennis wear, aka most probably Bjorn Borg, I would think. Yeah, that was my time.
It also reminds me of the 1966 World Cup jackets that Ramsey and the team wore.
Yeah. I was down in the Flamingo that particular night.
No.
Come on, there you go. That's the link you want, isn't it?
We came out after, I don't know what time it was. We came out late and I'm walking the streets of London and the place is going crazy. All the horns are beeping, and I go, what just happened? And they said, someone said, oh, England just won the World Cup. All right, I see. That's why they're doing it. Okay, never mind.
I tell you what, well, because I was 6 and I wasn't really into football, and all my aunts and uncles are around watching the telly, and you're in the Flamingo Club, and I go, I can't stand this. I'm going out, and I'm 6, and I go out and I walk down to my local park, and it's like a zombie attack has just happened. Nobody is around, and I'm sitting in my park on the seesaw. I remember. Then all of a sudden, all these hundreds of kids come running in saying, "We are the world champions. We're the champions."
I can't get over the fact that you were 6
and
never had picked up a guitar.
Yeah, my.
I don't even remember it. I was 4, mate.
Oh no!
More to the point, Andy. What was happening at the Flamingo? Were you playing, or who was on?
No. We were up from Cardiff to just see some bands down. I did it a couple of times. Saw Herbie Goins in the night time and saw John Mayall and the Blues Breakers.
Wow!
There was a batch.
Which particular legend was in the stable at that?
No, it was Eric.
Oh yes.
There's a
First album.
and a cinema seats down the front of that club, and I was sitting down. It was during the Sideboards day when he had that kind of look. A fabulous club, very very exciting. George. I didn't see Georgie Fame down there, but that period with Georgie Fame, Soup Money, Herbie Goins, man, that was so exciting.
So seeing Eric, was that the first time you'd seen him? Was it mind blowing?
Yeah, it was mind blowing, and it was also a realization, I'm never going to be that, am I? So I put my sights on being Steve Cropper as opposed to being Eric Clapton, and I've stuck with that. In that, I think that man deserves more praise than he gets. He was a fabulous rhythm guitar player. I mean, some of those early records, Don't Fight It, 64, 5, 7, 8, 9, all the little licks at intros. For Booker T, if it was Bootleg, or it was Don't Mess With Miss Cupid, or 99 and a half, he had a little lick at the front that was world class.
No, you're right. It's the sheer understatement.
Yeah.
Of those. Yeah.
But do you see yourself? Have you always seen yourself as a rhythm player? Because your playing is amazing.
Very early on, I realized I could never do that Eric Clapton thing. It was. I knew it wasn't me, but I could play all the Booker T stuff. I could do Green Onions. I could do Bootleg. I could do Hip Hugger, but I couldn't do anything else. It's a bit like even now when I play instrumentals. If I play Hideaway, I can do the whole of Hideaway and do it really good. But stretch out and be I don't have that vocabulary, that blues. I don't have it.
No, I just wanted to make one point. But before I forget this, what's fresh in my mind is that when you were talking about that, like those sort of parts. And I don't know if this was you, but the guitar parts, the arrangement on Scar 67 on Flang Dang are so on money.
Oh man, you're one of the few people that's bloody recognised that album. No, that's all of Flang Dang is just me and Paul Beavis. It's my bass playing. That's what got me into that. I bought a little Mark bass amp, small cube. And I played the bass. What I do is I put the song down first of all with Paul in the studio, and then I run back and forth after removing the acoustic guitars or putting them back on, put all the guitar licks, do all the vocals. I love that album. In fact, that's kind of a full stop for me. Time to move on. I love that album. I love my guitar playing. this is very, very me. I love bass playing. I just I'm
Right,
like
Frank.
the
No, but
lyrics.
like I said, but it's because it's not you have your whole blues armory and you like the kind of the Raikuda tech
Oh,
recipe book a lot.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
But it's but this is something different. This is just seems to have a very authentic kind of proper old King Tubby vibe.
I'd say my writing and those songs were of a time maybe late 58s, early 60s, and that's it, you know, which is why it's not going to get played now. I'm of my time, and I'm very happy being there. I like that music. I've not moved on. There are bits I hear every now and again, and I go, God, that's really good. And then I go back and I'll go and play T-Bone Walker or Ray Charles or even early Stevie Wonder, anything other than this is the music of today is for the people of today, and that's fine.
But that's exactly just like your music and our music was the same.
Yeah.
Do you think, Andy? Do you think it's that sort of like, oh, I'm never going to be one of those lead guitar guys? Does that come out of a certain amount of, I wouldn't say lack of confidence, but for those guys, a certain sort of bravado that they had initially, that in their personality, that made them the lead guy up the front?
Oh yeah, no, it's a psychological thing. I mean, guitar players, it's a language, and the language they speak, I understand it or I don't. And I understand Eric Clapton, and I understand B.B. King, and I understand Albert King, and a vast amount of others. But there's other guitar players I just don't understand. And that's them speaking, and it's whatever drove them to be psychologically, whatever drove them to put themselves out front and closet themselves and become obsessed. If you don't become obsessed, you're not going to do anything. When people say to me, Andy, what would you say to anybody starting out now? I wouldn't say anything, because they're not going to listen to me. If you've got the virus, like I did when I was a kid, you don't listen to anybody. You're going to do it, no matter what.
Yeah.
I'd quite like to know the people whose language you don't understand, which can be off the record.
Oh no.
You played with Joe Satriani, didn't you?
Oh, can you imagine that? Can you figure that? Because I got the phone call again. 90% of any of my connections with anyone is Glyn Johns. And Glyn was going to do an album with Joe, and he'd mentioned to Joe that you should play with a rhythm guitar player. And anyway, so when it came about, and I thought, well, I better speak to Joe, because I need to know what's going on here, because I know what he does, and I want to know if he knows what I do. And I phoned him up, and I said, oh, Joe, blah, blah, blah. Why me? And he said, well, no, I saw you. I think it was Fillmore East or Fillmore West, one of them, West. He said, no, I saw you the other night with Eric on the blues tour. No, yeah, let's give it a go. And I said, well, I know what you do. Can you send me something? And he sent me this one song, and I think it was Luminous Flesh Giants or something. And the lick went like this for me. And I thought, I can do that. 3 weeks, I was about 3 feet away from him looking. I couldn't think as fast as he could play. But he's a lovely guy. He'll never do it again. There was man.
You get all those modal stuff, all that modal stuff that they play in, those guys.
No, I'm watching this. When we were doing a playback, he would sit and he'd listen. And I'd think, man, that was on. We've got that. And he'd go, no, we got to do it again. And I'm thinking, why? And there'd be a lick in there that went something like this. And he'd miss a note or something. And I go, okay, but we'll do it again. Because they were all live. You know, it was Manu, Nathan East, myself, and Joe for 3 weeks.
Wow.
Did you feel insecure at any time?
Oh, good grief. Yes, I felt insecure every gig I've ever had. Every tour I did with Eric, I thought I was going to be fired afterwards. I wish someone had said to me, I managed to get him. Obviously, I wouldn't have listened. Enjoy it. Just get on with it.
No, it doesn't happen. I'm the same.
Every time we finished, I thought, that's it. Because you weren't told, by the way. It wasn't like I was making it up. The amount of bass players and drummers that went through that system when I was there for that 13 years, world class. And I'm there going, all right, well, there you go. It'll come soon. In fact, I tell you what I'm going to do. And I did in the end. I said, I'm going to leave before I get fired. because I don't think I could have stood being fired.
Do you think it's not just about your playing though? Because you're obviously, we all know it's about how good your playing is, but you obviously are a guy people like to have around then. Is that what it is?
The gig on stage, let's say it's 2 hours. You're on a 3-month world tour with someone. You better be self-contained, and you better be the kind of person that they don't even have to think about. And you better be the kind of person that has the attitude that I had of working with someone like I don't want someone to work for me. It's as simple as that. As far as playing the guitar, there are millions of players out there everywhere I go that are better than I am. And some of them do come up and say, I could do that gig. I could do what you're doing. And I'm going, yeah, I suppose you could. But they don't realize the gigs, that's only the one part of it. And my part was the B part. My part was...
You give good bus.
Yes. And I do too. It was the big thing when I first joined Eric Clapton. His fan base couldn't get it at all. Why? Maybe the punchline came, which has been around for years. Now, maybe he's good on the bus. And the truth is, I was bloody fabulous on the bus. And that is the gig.
Do you know, but in many ways, I think there is a resonance that comes off your history. The fact that you were a pop star, you were someone who knows how to give good song as well. And in a way, I kind of compare you a bit to Nils Lofgren in Bruce Springsteen's band. You know, he's been the sideman in that band for so long, but every time I see that band, I think, you know, Keith Don't Go.
Yeah.
Those great songs that he sang. And that just adds to the weight of what's on stage.
We were both at A&M too. So that was a real good period and a fabulous connection there. Thank you for that. And certainly the only reason I went to playing guitar more was I couldn't get arrested. After 1978, when punk came along, A&M dropped me. My first album was for 1906 on Music for Pleasure. They sold it. I managed to get one more deal with Warner Brothers. I got a 7-year deal with Warner Brothers. Flew to America. Mo Austin, Lenny Waronker, Russ Titleman did the big picture. I got dropped the next year. And that was it. I couldn't get arrested anyway. Couldn't get a job. So I was always available. If somebody phoned and said, we're doing a big charity gig, are you around? And I go, oh, yeah, of course I'm around. And that's how it all kicked off.
Because in many ways, those guys don't know about the failures, if you like. They don't see that record that didn't do so well, even though in retrospect, Spider Jiving is still a great record.
Yeah.
I was only going to say, because one thing from your time, well, I love the one reference, for some reason, I always remember this. This is from an interview about 1981, not with you, with Nick Hayward, when Haircut 100 were huge. And he was told about his influences, and he said, I'll never forget seeing Andy Fairweather Low on Top of the Pops. And that's kind of where I get my look from.
Good grief. Well, him and the singer with Pilot, and me and my voice and Sting. Somebody once said, record company, if you'd have been better looking, you know, when it came to Sting and his success and my failures, if you'd have been better looking, I don't know. Life in the rock and roll business, eh?
Do you know what? That's funny you mentioned that, because I was playing La Boogaruga in my kitchen yesterday, and my wife just suddenly looked up from making the dinner or whatever we were all doing and went, is this Sting? Your voice, there's a similarity in your voice.
There is a similarity. Yeah,
I know it. He's done well for himself.
Let's go back to the beginning, because you know, you're talking about some of the later years now, but we you know, it's really interesting to put this in context. And you grew up in Cardiff. I love that part of the world. I went to Swansea every single summer in the 1960s, early 70s. My aunt and uncle came from Swansea. And the Mumbles was my...
Mumbles still is now. They've rejuvenated that area now. It'll be finished soon, and it'll be fabulous. They're still working on it. But that whole seafront there, they've spent a lot of money, and it's going to be top notch.
But let's talk about just your first, you know, initial attraction to music and where that was, where that came from.
Is it one record?
One concert.
Oh, there we go.
One concert, got persuaded in school.
Oh, yes, of course.
By a friend of mine, Philip Harrison. There was a show at Sapphire Gardens in Cardiff, February the 28th, 1964, because Bill Wyman's got a coffee table book, and the set list is in that coffee book for that particular night. Mike Sann and Billy Davis, top of the bill. Bern Elliott and the Fenmen, the Leroys, and the Leroys. Exactly. You had to be around then. And the Stones were on. And I went to up until that time, my whole life was dominated by football. I was a goalkeeper. In school, out of school, weekends, every night, we'd be playing football. And I went to this show, and there they were in their little black leather waistcoats, and they started off with Talking About You, which has been confirmed by Bill's book. And it was from that moment on, it was like, I don't know what it was. You can't put it into words. It's like you get it or you don't. And I'm afraid I got the bug. And everybody said, it's not what you should do. You need to get a proper job. My two brothers had apprenticeships. That was the way to go. Keeping in mind, that was 64. By 66, I'm in London. I'm playing got residencies at 4 clubs in London. Speakeasy, Blazes, Sibylla's and Tiles. I mean...
Where did you get your guitar? What happened?
Yeah, well, one year I was meant... If I'd have got it in 64, yeah, we might have been a little... Keeping in mind the Stones, the Beatles, Small Faces, they're all up there. 62, 64. So... I do get a guitar in the end, Futurama, which I always wanted, eventually. A Hoffner Everything. That was really the first main guitar, because I ended up working in Barrett's of Manchester. Edmonds worked there before me. When he left, because I was mitching off school and just going in every day. And
Dave Edmonds?
Yeah.
Oh.
Really Grand, the manager, said, well, do you want a job then? And I went, yeah. So I'd take out my Hoffner of Everything, and then the next time I bring it back and I go, can I take out that 330, but still pay for the Hoffner of Everything? And then can I take out that Jazzmaster and keep paying for that and then bring it back? So yeah, I kind of had, literally was I could dip in my chocolate box and pick out any one of them and then bring them back for the next gig. And I got obsessed playing and doing all of that.
But I guess it was the blues that really...
No, it was soul.
It
was Booker T. Cardiff was a Bay Area. So the big deal with the black kids was to turn on the white kids. That was the deal. Get them all stoned out of their heads on dope, give them a 12 paper or a 5 paper and then tell them to inhale no big time. Then he'd be all gone. Discotheques with Seaburn speakers blasting out Booker T, blasting out the Olympics, blasting out fabulous records. So that was it.
In a way, I suppose that was kind of mod culture, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it was. It was mohair suits. It was brute aftershave. It was cab collars. It was Beatle boots, or Cuban boots. Anello and David, which I have a pair, I might add. So that was it. It was so exciting. And then Georgie Fame had come to town, Zoot Money and his big roll band had come to town, Alexis Corner, Herbie Guys, they'd all come to Top Ranks or other venues. And if a record came out, I'll never forget it. Midnight Hour had just come out, and I'm outside Spiller's record, and I've just bought Midnight Hour. Say that's the Saturday. On the Monday, Fame's in town, and they are playing Midnight Hour. Oh, man.
Well, it's like Jimi Hendrix playing Sgt. Pepper's like the week it comes out. People did that, didn't they, in those days?
Oh, man. We did the Hendrix to 67. That was a 19 or 20-day tour where Hendrix is top of the bill. The Floyd, the Move, the Nice, Eric Parrott, and ourselves all on one bill.
I know, yeah, because we've had Nick. Obviously, we play with Nick. Both of us play with Nick Mason, so we've also had Nick on the show. And I'm
a big fan of Nick.
That is such a famous tour.
Yeah,
I mean, but we jumped a little bit. But while we're on it, just what stories are there from that tour? How was the bus?
The bus, Hendrix would always go on to the next town. If we played Nottingham and we were going to Sheffield or something, he'd always go on to the next town. Everybody else except the Floyd were on the bus. So there wasn't much conversation with the Floyd at all. And I'm not sure there was any real connection with Sid at that time. I think Sid might have travelled on his own. And it was a funny old tour in that the Floyd got to use the sheet at the Albert Hall.
The sheet.
Which meant that the old wax disc you could project onto it. And Savoy Gardens, they were the only two venues they were allowed to use it because all the councils said it was a fire hazard and you couldn't do it. So you'd have to see the Floyd without without the sheet and with the wax disc could go and all of that. And I'll never forget it because I'm watching the Floyd and I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? Because they start with Set the Controls to the Heart of the Sun. I couldn't figure it out. You know, it became one of my favorite numbers to play with the Floyd, with Roger when I did that. And
it's amazing. I've told Guy before, but obviously we play Set the Controls in the band. But when I was 13, the first time I ever jammed with any kids ever with guitars and keyboards, it was to Set the Controls. It's been there all my life as well.
Well, that for me, 67. I just didn't get it. I got Hendrix. In fact, I didn't get it. In fact, it was so over my head, I just couldn't believe it. Because up until then, there'd been Eric Clapton, there'd been Steve Cropper, there'd been Hank Marvin, but there'd never been this.
No, I can't imagine. That's one thing I can't contemplate what it would be like. Just how anyone's head would compute seeing Hendrix. Yeah. I remember, you know, as Pete Townsend has said, it was literally a shaman. You know,
twice a night, I used to sit and watch that. At the Albert Hall, I was there for the sound check early, and I do remember him sitting behind the drums too, because he was he liked to play the drums at the sound check, and he would do Spanish Castle Magic, but he'd be playing it on the drums.
Wow, that cut out. It's like, it's weird. Not only does it not allow music, she doesn't allow percussion either. And it's strictly Islamic. It doesn't allow music.
And he'd be playing the drums. Sometimes the wind would cry Mary, sometimes it wouldn't, because what he was doing with the guitar wasn't sometimes capable to last to the very end of the gig for Wild Thing.
And there's a little connection on this tour as well, because the Mover on it and Roy Wood, and then Amen Corner had a hit with a Roy Wood song, didn't they?
Yeah, he sent me. We were on the same agency, Galaxy Entertainments. They were managed by Tony Secunda. There's a little story there.
Managed T-Rex, right?
Yeah. But he kind of got involved because Flowers in the Ring. We're going to moving off on tangent. Yes, he sent me a cassette of Hello Susie. With a bit of a drawing on it and a letter saying, I think if possible you could do that. And if so, he wouldn't mind being there when we recorded it. Well, I didn't tell him when we recorded it, and we did it. And it's a very unlike the Moves version, because they did do a version of it later. But yeah, that took off as well. I used to think, because we started with Gin House, World of Broken Hearts didn't do so well, but it's a fabulous song. Then Bend Me Shake Me, and followed by maybe Eye in the Sky, and then Hello Susie. And you're thinking, this is just what you do. Until the House of Cards comes, boom, tumbling down.
Let's not jump to the House of Cards.
No, I want to, sorry, yeah, guys, because one thing I want to, is that in all the bios of you I've come across, Andy, is there's this thing of, we had Amen Cora, and then we were in London, and then this was happening. But there's never the bit before that. Like, who are these guys, and where do you find each other?
Right. I was in a band, my second band in Cardiff, and I decided to move on, and I broke up two other bands, a band called Brother John and the Witnesses, and another band, and I thought, I'm going to form this band, but we need you in particular. I'd watched them and thought they'd be perfect for the soul thing, where you can play, you can play the song. You're not the sax player. You're not going to pull the solo out, but you can play the song. And these were the perfect people for that. And when I formed Amen Corner, I realized I'd actually got a bass player and guitar player together as a unit to do boom, 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 whatever. So I thought, I'll just sing. And I did. And I'm not Paul Carrick's a singer. Aretha Franklin's a singer. Ray Charles is a singer. The list goes on of great singers. I'm someone who just sings. And a singer is someone who just opens his mouth. If you believe it. I mean, I like Mick Jagger, certainly the early days, and I like Ry Cooder. You wouldn't say they were great singers, but I think they're fabulous singers because they're people who sing. And I get Peter Green, another great, for me, a great voice, very typical. And Hendrix, too, who was not particularly fond of his own voice, but, you get the person.
Selling the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wish Hendrix, I'd felt better about his voice. But there again, he had enough other issues to to be.
But it's a big band to get. You've got a 7-piece band, right? You've got a band with the horns in it. Probably that's why that Hello Susie sounds so much more like Wizard than anything else, because this is brass, you know. So I mean, obviously you're not going to get as much money. Are you splitting it 7 ways? It's a tricky number.
Yeah, but that never came into it. That was when we went to London, we did a gig in Bournemouth. Our agent at the time, Johnny Blaine, his name was, 24 Tresillian Terrace. He got us a gig in Bournemouth, and on that bill was a band called the Lonely Ones. Jethro Tull were on that bill too, very early on. And they recommended us to Galaxy Entertainment's Ron King. I don't know if it's a name you're familiar with, but I am.
That sounds familiar. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, you're saying them. Ron King, Don Arden, nice.
Right.
Yeah.
But you get the drift. They recommended us, and then we get a phone call saying, come up, do these gigs. Ron had Romford. He had a dance hall in Romford. He had one in Boreham Wood, the Lynx Ballroom. He had one in Finchley, or Barnet, rather. And he would get bands to audition on the weekend. But he charged people to come in. Now, there were letters in the back of the Melody Maker, time after time again, going on about that. But anyway, we passed the audition, and he became our manager. And things just took off. We had more gigs. There were too many clubs and not enough bands. You could do 3 gigs on a weekend, a Mayfair, Top Rank, and an all-nighter. 7 of us in a room at the Madison, Sussex Gardens in the basement. 7 of us in a room. Wednesday night speakeasy, 12 o'clock, that was. Half-hour slots. Man, what a club that was. Blazes. We did play the Bag of Nails, but we didn't have a residency there. Tiles, that was another one. It was so bloody exciting. It really was special.
And what was the audience looking like?
Packed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what kind of people were they?
Young. Oh, no, young and, young and very, very enthusiastic. Tiles had its own crowd. The Speakeasy was a late night club, so it was for musicians to go to.
I was going to say, that was the Speakeasy was the kind of in-house place, wasn't it?
Yeah. And twice, while we're doing our residence, you do half-hour slots. So you get in, no dressing room, you're in the cloakroom. It's about 3 feet, and you just stand there. 1 o'clock, right, give us another half hour, fellas. Oh, they're still in here at 3 o'clock, give us another half hour. And you'd go out, and it's about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and Hendrix is there. He's there quite often, I might add. And he asks if he can get up and play. And we do Can't Turn You Loose. So he flips Clive's bass upside down, and off we go into Can't Turn You Loose. Now, on the tour, the Hendrix tour, Kathy Etchingham was asked, his girlfriend at the time, what did Jimmy think of the other bands on the bill, And she said, well, he didn't really think too much of it, but he did think that Amen Corner were all right. We hadn't got the Bend Me, Shake Me then. This is Gin House time, this is World of Broken Hearts time, and we're playing Soul, Shake a Tail Feather. I Don't Want to Discuss It by Little Richard. That was our little stick at the time.
Because you could have carried on and become one of those sort of bands that end up on the Old Grey Whistle test that, make long tunes and, seen as an album artist. You did go very pop all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah, we went very pop because after World of Broken Hearts was a fabulous song, and I thought it was going to be it was the next one after Gin House, and I thought that's the way we were going. And I had a Smokey Robinson album, Away We A Go-Go, I think it's called. And on there is a song, More, it's called, and it goes like this. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Okay.
So I pinched the piano riff and put it to that song of Ben. Then we'd done the backtrack at Decca, and we're away, we playing up north somewhere, we come back, and Noel Walker, the producer, has put on the horns. Now, we don't have a trumpet player. And he's put on the horns in the style of Herb Albert, near enough, which I didn't like at the time, but I grew to like the more successful that record got. That was the turning point. That's where you went, oh, let's try for another one.
Yeah.
And then let's try for another one.
And you're a good-looking lad. You're a good-looking lad. So you get on the front.
We were all, the funny thing about that is when people say, I was the face of 69, it makes you laugh, obviously. But for me, I was just ordinary. I didn't look upon, I was just a face. Good-looking people were other people. I was just me. So I never bought into it. And it became a bit of a burden in the end. And it's certainly a burden now. He said it. We thought he was dead. It's like the things I put up with, and you go, look, you need to turn around and have a look in the mirror because I'm 76 and I'm doing all right. All right. I'm afraid we can't all, I say this every now and again, but we can't all be Ken Barlow, you know.
There's actually a couple of points that we passed, and it was firstly, when you said about being a soul band, because Gin House Blues, I think, is actually a really quite risky and purist thing to put out as a first. You know, it's like that. That's more a John Mayall kind of. I don't know. You know what I mean? The sort of thing the Stones would have wanted to do.
Yeah, there was no plan.
Yeah,
Gin House was the song that Paul Williams, the bass player, was Zoot Money used to play. So when we'd see Zoot Money, Paul would come along and he'd do more his Nina Simone version of Gin House, which would go boom, 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 boom. Well, our drummer wasn't quite up to speed, so we were always boom, ding, ding, ding. We got the audition for Decca. We're playing Streatham Locarno. Ron King has persuaded the guy to come and see us. So he comes and sees and goes away and phones Ron King and says, tell the boys to be in the studio 9 o'clock on Monday morning. We get in at Monday morning at 9 o'clock. We're all set up. And then the guy says, where's the trombone player? I've been through this before. We don't have a trombone player. Yes, you do. I saw you the other night. He saw the other band. He didn't see us. We went, so while you're here, let's do something. And it just, well, let's do Gin House. Boom. And that was it. That's how it started. No, without that bit of luck.
Right.
yeah.
But you were on some tasty labels. I know. Were you on DRAM?
Yes, we were.
And then you went to Immediate.
Yeah, don't.
I mean, but to be on that, I mean, they are labels that were kind of established by the record companies to be, you know, progressive and independent and progressive. And obviously, you know, we've had Andrew Lugo Oldham on the show a couple of times, and you know that Immediate was his label. It was, you know, it's a very cool label. You know, Small Faces, etc. What's your experience? Oh,
yeah, they were independent. They were mainly independent of our money too.
Keeping you independent of it.
Yeah, exactly. And myself and Andrew never got on. Famous quote of Andrew on the Ugly Whistle test when old Whistling Bob is speaking to him. And we're just getting involved with the media. I think we just recorded Natural Sinner as well, which didn't end up on Immediate. And Bob says about, what's Andy Fairweather? What's he like? He said, yeah, trouble. And oh God, this is trouble with Andy. I had that up. The trouble with Andy is he thinks of Jerry Garcia. And that was it.
he said that on TV.
Yes, he did. Yeah, trouble with God. He thinks he said it on the Old Grey Whistle test with the Whistling Bomb. He thinks
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I did meet Jerry Garcia, by the way, when we recorded Spider Jiving. I did meet him. Lovely man, too. Very small hands.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
I mean, Half as Nice was such a High in the Sky. These were part. I mean, listen, we had this conversation earlier, but these were part of my childhood. These were big radio records, weren't they? Going a long way.
Yeah, High in the Sky, I think it's a great record. We'd been on tour with Gene Pitney, which is, you can get the 24 hours from Tulsa. I mean, not consciously.
The great record, 24 hours of Tulsa.
Yeah, oh, man. And he was good fun, except those gigs we do in those theatres, the Gorman or whatever, the Capitals or whatever they were, the vocal mic was the only mic that would go to every dressing room. So you wouldn't hear the band. Because the band were mic'd up. I don't know.
You were on the tannoy.
That's brutal.
Well, brutal if you're Gene Pitney, because he is. I'm only 24 hours from that. But man, he was fabulous. It was all good fun.
But also, what was this like? And because I know I've heard you say before, it's like, I don't know what I was hearing when I went to see those early gigs.
Yeah.
What were you hearing when you were on stage? Because monitoring hadn't been invented, right? Charlie Watkins hadn't done his magic yet.
No, he hadn't. In fact, the first time I saw the Charlie Watkins situation was with Status Quo.
Just tell me who Charlie Watkins is.
Watkins, when? WM, it was Charlie Watkins, yes, for our listeners. He basically invented monitoring and was the home PA, the PAs that everyone used.
I did see the Hollies once, very early on, and they'd come back from Sweden. with an acoustic PA, with like a control system on the side of the stage. That was the beginnings of the time was changing. It took a long time. But yeah, on stage, certainly in the beginning, you'd be closely in, so you'd hear the band. We had a separate little PA for the two horn players, two 12-inch Marshalls, which would be in the middle of the stage, and then the other Marshalls would be in front. So we had that kind of a setup.
There was always feedback.
No, I don't know why we never got that. Well, maybe you know what?
Does that mean everything's going through a Marshall? So just everything sounds like a Les Paul?
Yeah, well, fabulous. Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with that.
What about songwriting, Andy? Did because a lot of those hits weren't yours.
No, they weren't. That was another big turning point. Realizing you were around at a time. We'd had our 15 minutes. We were going nowhere else. We were doing other people's songs, and
because Paradise he was a big Italian artist, wasn't he?
Yeah. And I only realized when I made my first solo album in 2006. I went on a radio show, and someone brought out the original version that we'd copied it from. It's exactly the same. The only difference is me singing. So there was no originality there, but Shaltami produced that.
We had him on, yeah.
Oh man,
he's gone.
He was fabulous. But it was at our end time then with Andrew Oldham. That was a really jumpy and bumpy period. But yeah, Half as Nice, done it at Olympic on an 8-track. I still have the actual original 8-track too.
Oh wow!
It was in a skip outside Olympic, by the way, and a friend of mine saw it and said, "Do you want it?" I remember it was a fabulous time and a great record. I play it now, still in the set, and I love it. And thankfully, you need some bullets in your armory on a gig, every now and again.
But it's a great song record as well.
It's a great. Can I just say one thing that I really enjoyed finally is the debutantes version from 2019 with you on.
Alan, yeah,
the energy in it is fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's in the original key too, which I don't normally do it, but I can do it on a day. I can go in a day and be who I used to be.
That's the trouble, isn't it? When age, you never know what voice you have on any particular day.
I mean, it used to drive me crazy. Certainly in the 70s, I found it a real problem because I'd be partying. We'd spend 3 weeks rehearsal and party till the end. And then, of course, you go to the first gig and you're absolutely shattered. I remember West Drunton, we rehearsed for 3 weeks there and then did a gig. And I lost my voice about 3 songs in,
No. But then you have the confidence to form another band and call it Fairweather, which is a great name for a band, but it puts you right at the front.
The reason we broke Amen Corner up was, apart from the fact that we'd run our course, certainly with our 15 minutes, Andrew Oldham was going into liquidation. And he was trying to get us to sign. This is where we'd have our confidence. Come on, sign. And go, no, I'm not going to sign. And he would give me a reason. And all I could say was, it's bollocks. It's Welsh. I'm not going to sign, basically. So I caused a few, and we never signed. So we never did get pushed on. But the only way to get rid of it was to finish the band. So we finished the band. And then I wanted to play guitar, and I wasn't playing guitar. And in fact, I wasn't doing anything either. You go for a gig at Amen Corner at the top of what we were, I wouldn't even sing. And if I did sing, you wouldn't hear anything.
Must there be instrumental passages as well?
Well, what they do is the band had played 2 numbers before I got on. I'd preen myself or change my jacket 5 times until I felt comfortable. Then I get on, strike up the signature of Bend Me, Shape Me or something, and we're off. They're screaming their heads off, and place is rammed. No one's listening to anything. You start up Half as Nice, nobody's listening, and I'm shaking hands, and I'm smiling, but I'm not doing anything. Mm-hmm. And we're traveling hundreds of miles for 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Right.
And then I'd go home, and I didn't have a feeling of any real worth, in truth, except it was successful, but where was the rewards of this success? In that the only money we actually made was from gigs. 7 of us living in a house. It's the overheads, 7 bows and arrows, 7 air rifles, 7 bottles of milk, or whatever it was. We weren't getting anything else off the top, nothing off the records, except aggravation. You know.
Where did most of that band end up? The Strawbs was one of the groups.
Well,
Yeah, Blue Weaver was the
Blue.
name.
In fact, I'm seeing Blue on Thursday because Dennis, the drummer Dennis Blue, he passed away, so we're having a bit of a do for him locally. But Blue went to the Strawbs and he went to Family, and then Blue and Dennis, both of them ended up, when Fairweather finished, they ended up with the Bee Gees. But the Bee Gees at the time in the UK, when their time was gone, you know, they're playing Batley Variety Club or whatever, it's all over. But then they went to America with them. So Dennis and Blue, both of them, jive talking, all of that. They're all part of that.
Excellent.
So I go to Miami later on with Roger, and I'm just a hired hack in the band. And Dennis says, "Oh, do you want to meet up?" Come, and he picked me up, took me to his house. They both became tax socials, the buggers. And there's me, a jobbing musician, goes to his house. He's got the boat there on the old waterway. Oh, man, yeah. Well done doing both. They finally got recognised in a documentary by the Bee Gees recently, saying how important they were to whatever went on through that period that they were there.
Listen, Fairweather, you had a hit with Natural Sinner, and I did hear there was a brilliant comment that it became a skinhead song. Did you hear that, Andy?
No, you're joking.
I'm a natural skinhead.
You know,
I'm a skinhead son. I wear boots and braces and kick you up the bum.
Where did you find your rabbit holes, Gary?
I'm assuming to do that for one of my songs now. You kind of think, now that's great that it linked over. But that was basically the rhythm section of Amen Corner. And
did anyone ever suggest? I'm really sorry to interrupt. I'm really sorry. Did anyone ever suggest calling it Fairweather and Friends?
No, because I'm not sure Fairweather had too many friends then.
There's an obvious gag there. That's all. But
I'm grateful that they did all talk to me after we broke up. It wasn't like, oh, he's a pain in the ass, or even worse, which I must have been. Because it was, I was driven by this thing, whatever it was. And certain Natural Sinner we were about 15 grand in debt when Amen Corner broke up. And we got a deal with RCA. And so we paid off debt and then recorded Natural Sinner and an album. And that lasted maybe a year and a half, that period. It was too hard, that period.
But did you feel that you wanted more credibility as a guitar player? Was there a sense of like, I want to get back to my roots, because at that time, obviously at that time, Eric's becoming a really serious contender, artist. And how did you feel?
No, there was I wanted to be a guitar player. I wasn't. I was just a singer. And sometimes I'd play on the records, sometimes I wouldn't, or sometimes I'd arrange, but I wouldn't play. And I'd always be playing, and I think, no, it's not so much credibility. I wanted to play. I wanted to do something. And I wasn't. Been a life of, I didn't do anything. I did no vocal practicing, we'd just go to a gig and I'd come back. And that would be it. There was no work ethic at all. I'd been listening to the stuff, thinking, oh yeah, no, I need to do a bit of that. So I've just driven to want to play guitar. That's a lot.
It's an interesting period for me, this bit coming up now, with La Boogaruga as the album that really breaks you as a solo artist. And in the we've talked about it on the show before, but that sort of Charlie Gillett was the DJ playing a lot of this Americana music. It was Little Feat. There was a sense of country coming into the sound. Was it a change of listening for you?
Absolutely. Those bands. I mean, the band. The second album, not first, the second album of the band, with The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, King Harvest Has Surely Come Up on Cripple Creek. Good grief. And Little Feat. It was so exciting. Yeah, Charlie Gillett too, playing all that stuff. It was such a creative time with record companies too, allowing bands like that to do stuff. It stopped. Maybe in the late 80s, all of that stopped. And I'm not sure music is different now. But at that time, Lowell George,
Yeah, a lot of dungarees, a lot of dungarees.
Yeah, lot of dungarees, a lot of late nights.
But then also there was an interesting sort of folk British sort of style with like Gallagher and Lyle, and that was also inserting itself into that kind of music.
Yeah, and A&M too, another A&M period. One of the reasons I ended up working with Glyn Johns was after I'd finished spider jiving with Elliot Mazer, they played me an album by Gallagher and Lyle that Glyn had done. And I loved it. I just loved the sound of it.
I love that album, yeah.
And,
Is that Heart on My Sleeve? Is it
yeah, man. But that was another producer. That was,
Oh.
yeah, that was another time. Because I'm on doing backing vocals on Heart on My Sleeve and Breakaway. We happened to be in town. They were in their studios. We popped in. Give us a bit of a vocal. Yeah, we did. Oh, they were great. Both of them. But I loved them in McGuinness Flint too. So I'm a big,
oh my God, yeah,
big fan.
And I'm Dead and Gone. Yeah, great.
Yeah, and there was so much going on then, which when that type of music, which is the music that I love, we're not going to hear again.
But I love the way you focused it, and it's true. It was what the band were doing, you know, music from the Big Pink. No, it was that changed everybody's opinions and where we all wanted to go, or you guys did.
Songwriting, their songwriting too, their ability to play. And the great thing about all of this, whether it's Little Feat or even the Beatles too, when the bar is that high, and with the Beatles it was that high because we're talking 19 number ones. And you're not just talking 19 number ones, but every record is crafted perfectly. If it's Norwegian Wood, if it's Strawberry Fields, you know, whatever, or, you know, I Am the World, whatever they are, it's perfect, the perfect arrangements. Eleanor Rigby. And bugger Paul McCartney discovers a tuning and writes Blackbird. How did he do that?
Yeah.
Just discovered it, and he writes that song and that tuning. Oh, man.
Yeah, you had the privilege of playing with Robbie Robertson as well, didn't you?
Well, I did, and it's there's and what was amazing was in fact, I did an album with him, an album called Storyville. It was fantastic. I spent 3 months working with him, and it was amazing. And every drummer in the world came through and worked on it. One of whom was Ginger Baker, and it was and Ginger was amazing because he was so in awe of Robbie, and it was incredible to hear these two talk. Because he said, we were doing this thing. We were all on this bus. We were going 100 miles an hour. And then you guys showed up and we went, oh my God, we need to get off. We need to stop, you know.
Yeah, Eric was a big fan.
Yeah.
Big fan, obviously, of the band.
And another little point, actually, that someone pointed out is in the movie Get Back, that if you look at how they all look, Paul looks like he could be in the band.
Yes.
Look, it's completely different to everyone else. It's like that 19th century preacher look.
When was the last waltz released?
75, 76.
Right, okay. Yeah. So we're going to talk about Wide-Eyed and Legless, obviously, a song about drinking. But I mean, I did love that tune. I bought that tune, you know, and there was something. Didn't it come out of a discovery of a guitar?
Yeah, in fact, I've still got one. I love that guitar now. In fact, it's on the table over there.
Is it a Harmony or no?
No, it's an old Gibson Armstock that my mate Mickey G, guitar player from Cardiff, famous guitar player, he found it in a skip down the bay. Brought it out. It'd been in a fire, so it was a bit rippled. And he got it sorted out so it was playable.
What kind of a Gibson is it, Andy?
What
kind of a Gibson is it?
It's a good.
It's called.
It's a 1947. It's hard
to get it.
It's hard to pick.
Oh, look at that
Model it is, but I think it's an L47 or something.
It's like a parlor guitar with a bit of with an electric.
Is it without a case?
Pardon?
Yeah, I got a good.
Is it without a case?
I'm afraid it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and he wasn't using it, and I asked him, would he sell it to me? He sold it to me for about 41 quid. And I went, if you ever want it back, you can have it for 41 quid back. And I sort of picked that guitar up, and for some strange reason, I played a major seventh. And out of it, with a lot of work, did come Wide-Eyed and Legless eventually, which was the last song to be recorded on the Boogarooga when we did it.
I've seen you do that riff on guitar, but didn't you? Isn't it like a Fender Rhodes or something on the or Wurlitzer?
No, it's a Fender Rhodes. Yeah, Rabbit.
You
Rabbit.
gave it to Fender Rhodes.
Rabbit, come on.
Rabbit is playing Fender Rhodes, and if you the original version,
Rabbit. For people who don't know, Rabbit.
John Rabbit Bundrick, yeah, who was in
Right.
three, then the
and BJ Cole. So those two solos on that on that particular song were live. They're not overdubbed. The Rabbit solo is phenomenal. BJ is fantastic.
yeah, BJ's brilliant at that.
And I found the original lyric that I'd scribbled out, and it had a third verse in it about the room spinning round, after having too much to drink and all of that. And I remember playing it to Glyn, saying, yeah, we want to do that. And he went, it's a lovely melody, Andy, but the subject matter. So anyway, that verse is not in there. And Bruce Rowland's on drums. And then Glyn put some strings on. In the days when you could put strings on, when I can't put them on anymore. I can't afford it. But it was fabulous. And I loved the record. And Bernie Ledden is on acoustic guitar too.
Wow.
He was in town. We'd been to see the Eagles at Wembley with Elton John and the Beach Boys. And then we saw him on the Sunday at Glyn's house, and Glyn said, well, Andy's in the studio, why don't you pop down? Now, keeping in mind, you know what chords are in that song. So we presented...
Most of them.
Yeah. So we presented to Bernie, and I think, but no, he plays by that Nashville numbers way. And he went, no, 1, 6, 1, blah, blah, blah. And then my association with him then, I ended up doing so much stuff, so much recording with Bernie over the years. Linda Ronstadt, Lou, Stevie Nicks, and David Crosby too. So the beat went on.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Do you want to just say, sorry, Gary, before we start, just to go back to that, because I remember being a sort of young schoolboy at the time and loving that song, that I always thought it was just about seeing a girl and being utterly sort of, knocked out by her. So there you go. It had an innocent message for the innocent.
Yeah, and not only that, it's been on one of those albums, compilation of love songs. And you're going, well, yeah, it is a love song of a drink, I suppose. And it was at a time, when I wrote that song too, I then subjectively felt obligated to be drunk wherever I went. And I did, unfortunately. So I kind of lived it for a while and then went, this has got to stop.
And it's funny because you don't have that rep, Andy. When you don't think of like, Keith or Joe Walsh or Mooney or anything. You're Mr. Tennis.
I am, yes. I am now, because I picked that up near enough. Certainly when I couldn't get arrested with anything, I did play a lot of tennis. And I certainly don't talk like Joe Walsh, who I did work with. And that is a strange voice. But then again, he would say this. I remember him looking at Alan Rogan at one point, and Joe looks at Alan and points at me and he said, "Is this guy all right?" Yeah, I was all right.
It's Andy. I mean, forgive me from saying, but it's easy for someone who just looks at the charts or whatever and think, well, that guy kind of vanished, but you didn't. You became one of the greatest sidemen of all times. I mean, if there was a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for sidemen, which there should be, you would be in it, right? Where does that all start? Where does your confidence as the sideman? Where does it begin? Where does this door open?
Because you say all these things seem to come from you say staying with Glyn. Were you literally staying with Glyn? I mean,
literally, maybe 6 months in a year. When Glyn recorded Slow and Backless with Eric, I was in the house. When he did Rough Mix, I was staying with him then. We did the Arms tour, so there's the big connection with Jeff, Jimmy, Eric, Bill and Charlie were on there. Willie and the Poor Boys comes from that. Bill Wyman and the Rhythm Kings come from that. I eventually ended up working with Eric from that. I did some stuff with Jeff. Glyn works with Joe Satriani. I work with him. Glyn works with Linda Ronstadt. I work with her. Glyn works with Stevie Nicks. I work with her. David Crosby. I worked with him. And it just goes on. I was so lucky. You need it.
Yeah. It's quite funny. It's like the only artist that Glyn worked with that it seems you didn't work with was The Clash.
Yeah, he was working with them at the time.
Yeah.
How did you end up singing backing vocals on Who Are You?
I'm staying at Glyn's, and And Pete says to Glyn, because he said, Andy's here, he said, well, tell Andy to come down, do some singing. So I went down there. There's Pete, John, myself, and Billy Nichols. And first song, who are you? Ooh, 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 ooh. And then I do about 5 others. It wasn't easy, by the way, because when I do backing vocals, as I do every now and again with people, I go, you got to let me pick my note. You can't tell me to sing something because I can't do it. I've tried, and it doesn't work. And luckily, I did get to pick my note. So that moved from that, and then from that...
Sorry, you even play guitar on that album. Didn't you play guitar on it?
No, I play guitar on the next one. It's hard.
And it's hard, yeah.
It's hard, yeah.
It's hard because Pete was being dried out in America, and I'm staying with Glenn. And then Roger comes in, and he says, oh, well, Pete's not here. And he said, well, Andy's in. Why didn't you let him? So for 3 weeks, I pretended to be, with Kenny and John and Roger in the studio, and then bashing them out and working on John's song, which is why my guitar remained on there, because it's John's song. And then Pete comes back, and there's 2 people I played with where there's no need. Actually, there's 3. The 2 would be Jeff Beck and Pete. So Pete comes back in the studio, and he starts playing, and I'm thinking, well, it's pointless me playing when Pete's playing, because no one can play an A chord bigger than Pete.
No.
Stop. And if there's a gap, don't play in a gap, because if there's a gap, then Pete wants there to be a gap. So I find myself absolutely tongue-tied and go, we get in and listen to the playback after about a day, and I look at Pete, and I say, I think I'll go off and play some tennis. And he went, yeah. And I did. And because there was no need for it. Once he's there, there's just no need.
You replaced you replaced your guitars.
Oh yeah, no, they were never recorded on the.
See, I was there to help the others play along.
Yeah, I was just there to be somebody, an electric guy who didn't cause too much friction and wasn't too tall. And then he came back, and then after that, I did the psychedelic tour of America. That was 1993. That was interesting.
See, I went to see that in LA. Yeah. I went to see the psychedelic tour. Did I go? I went with Paul McGann, or I didn't go with you.
No, I didn't go. No.
So at the Wilton, yeah. And I had no idea. Now was the first time. Today is the first time I knew that you were on that stage.
Yeah, no,
I'm upset. I didn't know that at the time. No.
There was when it was technologically ambitious.
Pardon?
It was technologically ambitious.
It had actors on the stage.
Yeah, we had 3 Peter had 3 actors. You go through that stage of the psychedelic album, which was the Click, with the screen. It was a great song on that album called English Boy, which I still...
No, there's about 5 great songs on that album. I think it's a real lost classic. English Boy is the last great Pete single, no question.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm... there was Pino, there was Simon. It was a good old band. Phil Palmer, Katie, as well as Billy Nichols and Rabbit. Well, there's a story there too, but no, we'll leave that.
Go on.
It's the deal is too. All those intricate bits. When he was with the Who, that were actually programmed, Rabbit would play him. A fabulous player, absolutely.
Oh, he was nuts.
What about Roger Waters? So this becomes a really long period of your life. I mean, what parts do you end up playing? Do you ever take on any of David's solos?
No, absolutely not. And that's another thing. I'm not that beast. And I never was and could never. No, I was a bass player mainly.
You played, as I say, you played a lot of bass on that. I saw it many times, yeah.
Yeah, from the beginning I did.
While Roger's just walking around doing the singing.
Yeah, well, Bob Dylan, acoustic guitar at the front. And he did that for a long time until they did that Live Aid thing at Hyde Park, and he came back then to play the bass on Comfortably Numb, which is one of my favourite numbers to play. I would stick to the plot.
No, that's the one. That's my absolute thing. And in fact, even on the tour I just did with David, the thing of drilling the drummer, the joy of that song is the absolute rigidity of getting the exact number of bass drums.
Yeah.
That's totally the thing. It's brilliant.
And then
You play bass, Andy, on Roger. You play bass on Comfortably Numb with Roger.
No, on stage live. Was my deal with that? Yes, I did. And
that's extraordinary. In front of me now is the bass player from Roger Waters' Comfortably Numb and David Gilmour's Comfortably Numb. I mean, that's a pretty cool place to be.
The funny old deal would be, so we're doing Comfortably Numb, and it gets off night after night, and then I'd start to get a bit creative through that whole long section. And I'd get away with it for maybe a couple of nights, and all I'd get from Roger, if I was stretching out a bit, trying a bit too creative, all I'd get is his head's looking straight out to the audience. If he did this to the left, just that was my cue. Pull it back, Andy. Stop it. And then as he'd coming off, he'd pass me, going off stage, and he goes, "That was very bouncy, Andy." That would be it.
But you know what? I remember coming to see you at Earl's Court with Roger. When was it? I can't remember. No, it wasn't the Dark Side. When you had the massive screen, just a big oblong screen. And I remember you had a solo number.
Oh, yeah.
You came on to some great sort of really lively country blues thing, if I recall correctly.
I had a couple of solos.
And you had like a Bo Diddley type guitar, it seemed.
I had a couple of things that I did with Roger. I was allowed to be out of the box, which was I remember in the early days when John Caron was in the band, and because I'd go off with Roger, we'd go to a bar or something, and we'd be banging out, and then John would be with the other members of the band, and he would say, because he'd tell Graham Brody, saying, "Why does Roger let Andy play like that?" You know, and it was like, because I wasn't in the mold of any of it.
That sounds about right.
I did get some moments. I had a moment in Money, and he'd written this song, Leaving Beirut, where I would do the front of the song, and then I would do the end of the song with a long kind of bluesy intro piece. And that, unfortunately, has not seen the light of day, but it is one of my finest moments.
No, it's fantastic. Well, there's some lyrics on that which I think are a bit problematic.
No, they are. Well, listen, we went to Beirut and played that song.
Right.
They were problematic lyrics, but Roger me just didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing this. It's when he would say on one of the tours, when one of his songs had heavily anti-Bush lyrics in it, and they'd come down the front and they'd give him the finger, you know, and they'd scream, and he'd just wash it off. No, you know, and the guy dimmed the lights. He said, "Never dim the lights. Light me. I want him to see me."
Yeah, that's true.
Yep, that is very true.
And it's about your work with George Harrison. I mean, we know you're a Beatles fan, and then you get to play with the man.
I don't know. So, you know what? I could never explain how fabulous. There are no words. It's a long story about how I got the gig, but when I did meet him, every time I met him, I could never get rid of the fact that he was George. And we did laugh a lot. I got some fabulous faxes that I would send him and he would send me. And I've got messages that were on the dictaphone then, you know, when people...
Did this come through Glyn Johns as well?
This came
Was
through...
it from Arms?
Well, in that Glyn got me connected with Eric, and they were going through between Eric and George, we need another guitar player. Who should it be? Alvin Lee? No. Gary Moore? No. Guy for Robbie Robinson? No. And they apparently... as in the big meal in Japan after one of the gigs on the tour. We played to 50,000 people at the Tokyo Dome and then go for a Japanese meal afterwards. George gets up, makes a speech, blah, blah, blah. Andy wasn't the first choice guitar player, and my head's going down. In fact, he was the 7th choice of guitar player, and George went, but he was the right choice. He was such fabulous. Door was open after a gig. Just get in there. He got me into ukulele. He always traveled with 2 ukuleles, even on the plane, by the way, on the plane with 2 ukuleles. And he taught me, one night we went up there, go on, have a go. What you do with this ukulele business? And we'd end up playing Everly Brothers songs or a bit of Johnny B. Good or whatever, to break me in. And now on every record I do, there's a bit of ukulele in the background there.
And of course, when George died and they did Concert for George, you got the role of playing his parts, his slide guitar.
I did.
And he wanted you to in the beginning, and your thing was you weren't going to, right?
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to because I didn't. I got the phone call from Roger Forrest, a good friend of mine, and he said, George wants you to play the intricate slide parts, because I'm a big Ry Cooder fan. I've met George at the Ry Cooder concerts at Hammersmith or whatever, and he assumed I played slide guitar, and I'm going, no, I don't. If I couldn't play like Ry Cooder, I'm not bothering. That's where the bar is that high. And I have enough trouble with my fingers without putting bits of metal in it. So I realized this was a life change. This moment in my life, this phone call that I've just done from Roger Forrest is going to change my life. So I can either turn up and they find out I'm a fraud. Get me his number. So he got me George's number and I rang him. I wish I could do his voice. George, I don't play slide. Tell me what you want me to do, and I got a book, and I literally still have that book, How to Play Slide Guitar. I can learn. And he said, well, I tell you what, I've never heard you play, but why didn't you just come up? Everybody seems to like you. And I did. I went up my Volkswagen Polo, pulled up right outside, because things were not going great then at all. And as he comes out, he looks at my Volkswagen Polo, and he goes, you have to drive that. I think, that's my car. That's my car. We went in, we laughed, and living in the material world, I based my bass playing on Klaus's playing on that album. Right. The way he played his bass on Gimme Love and all that, so melodic through the whole album. And he said, right, that's enough. Let's play something. And I said, let's play Gimme Love, because I knew it. I could sing it. I could sing the slide solo. Little did I realize I was going to have to learn that bloody thing, which I did, by the way. Greatest moment. He's got one of those video Sony phones that have only just come out, and we're having a delayed call with Tom Petty in America in his kitchen, oh man. He was at the end of the tour, because I only ever had, I borrowed one guitar from Roger on that tour, and I borrowed a couple from Alan Rogan. And George would go, is that your guitar? And I go, no, it's not. He said, what? No, it's just that. Is that all you got? I said, yeah. He bought me a Fender, brand new, one of those Eric Clapton Fender, and a case, 12 bottles of Lynch Barnage. Man, he was...
What a thing to keep. Presents from George.
Yeah, and I've still got the messages that he would send on the phone. Hello, pal. I'm passing through. Merry Christmas or whatever. I've kept them. I think I'll put them all to a disco beat and make a record. And I played with him at the Albert Hall. He phoned up one day, said, I'm going to do the Albert Hall with Gary Moore. Would you come up and play? Because they want to do While My Guitar Gently Weeps and something else. And I went, yeah, well, yeah. And he went, it's a long way, isn't it? I said, George, I'm coming. So I went up. I spent 2 nights with him. We played at the Albert Hall with Gary. And I had my own little tower in Friar Park. We got out the ukuleles and we watched George Formby and we talked and we laughed. He was great company. It was really sad, but yeah, it's great. But the good thing is, still with me completely.
Andy, I love that. Watch George Formby. Sorry, remember that. That's fantastic.
Right, he's an accomplished banjo ukulele player, George.
It's a great YouTube, isn't there, of George, just you see him in close-up, and then right at the end he looks down at the camera and you see it's him, but he's playing his ukulele. Andy, this has been such a privilege talking to you. Mate, what a life you are living.
I've said this a few times, and I really mean it, and at some point I'll be able to enjoy it, but sometimes I wish I was me. If you know what I mean? You get so wrapped up in
exactly what you mean.
The struggle, the album, no, it's doing nothing, whatever, all that's going on, and you're going, why didn't you just bloody enjoy it, man? Look at it. And I'm going, no, I'm not finished yet. But when I get old, I keep saying, when I get old, I'm going to live by the sea. And
Where do you live, Andy?
I live in Cardiff, and I live just outside Cardiff, this side of Caerphilly Mountain. But when I get old, I'm going to live by the sea.
What's next?
Next, I'm back on the road. Malcolm Mills, the guy that owned Proper Records, had a conversation with John Taylor, the guy that managed me, because Flang Dang, my last album, just just got absolutely kind of wasted out there. And it was a lot of efforts writing songs and structure in them. And I'm completely happy with that. If that's my final thing, I'm happy with that. I don't particularly want to waste my time writing songs, lyrics particularly anymore, because it consumes me. Every waking moment, wherever I am, if I was talking to you now and I was writing a song, I'd still be mulling over something to make sense of it and make my own kind of rubbish. So I've decided now, he went, I just don't think people know enough about you as a blues guitar player. Let's put an album together and we'll call it The Invisible Blues Man. And it rang a bell. And I went, yeah, I like that idea. So it's all stuff. One song is something I did in 1998. Man, it's fabulous. It's called Life is Good. I recommend it to anybody. And then they've taken stuff from concerts here and there. So there's an album coming out and I'm going to tour it in February and March. And then
we'd love to come and see you, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely.
I really want to come to London. Do you know where you're playing in London?
Yeah, we're playing the Half Moon and it's gone, if you know what I mean. It went near enough. I love that place. That place.
Squeeze us on the guest list. It'll be appreciated.
Okay, well, see, I'll tell you what, it's that gig to me. I played 24 years of arenas. Give me a night and a half moon.
We did it. Source as our second gig. Sourceful of Secrets. Yeah.
Did Roger come?
No, Roger came to the one we did in New York, but we did 4 nights down at the Half Moon, which is a tiny little pub, and it's absolutely brilliant, right?
We didn't fit. In fact, Lee had to be on beer crates.
Yeah, no, it's as gigs were. I played to about 300, 400 people, no more. And I'm that's where I am, and I'm happy that even I can pull out. At my age now, people are prepared to spend money to come and see me, and that'll.
If you're doing the South Coast, Brighton, Eastbourne, or Hastings,
I've no idea.
Okay, I'll look it up.
And the thing is, the places we're playing, if there's not places, if Deal in Kent is not on there or something, that's because it's at the wrong time. We couldn't get the venue or something. So, and I haven't toured now for 4 years, 2 years with COVID, 2 years looking after my wife, and I wasn't going to be bothered anymore, especially after Flying Down. But I've the engine's running, and I'm thinking, I'm looking forward to meeting up with the band, banging in some new numbers, some new instrumentals, bit more soul, bit more skiffle, few from Flying Down. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Andy, stay in touch. We absolutely loved having you on.
Yeah.
You are the perfect Rockonteur, mate.
Thank you both. Sometimes not only do I wish I was me, but man, sometimes we stop being invisible because there's so many things, that we could talk about and going, yeah, someone should have mentioned that. But we're mentioning it now. Thank you both.
All the best.
Thank you, Andy. All the very best, mate.
Shut up.
Cheers.
Wasn't that the perfect Rockonteur?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, and it's the old. I've said this for a while. Barely scratched the surface.
We did. So many stories. God, I saw a little flag up from our producer saying it. Almost time. I thought we haven't even touched, George Harrison yet. George Harrison. Thank God we did. That was a very touching story of him going and staying over at George's house in Henley and watching George Formby.
I know, that's a bit. I love that. That's. Yeah. Do you think we should do that, guys? Should we watch John Formby together?
Anyway, that it's good to be back. It's good to be. I think he's job. I love doing this job. I sit there and I think what a privilege it is to listen to these people that have been through the golden age and made it.
Exactly.
Right. So thank you to our producer, Ben Jones, Gimme Sugar. And also, what do people have to do, Guy?
They have to subscribe, Gary. They have to subscribe. They must subscribe. Otherwise, I just cannot tell you what's going to happen.
All right. Lots of love and thank you. And it's good night from me.
Yeah, love to all of you. Good night from them.